$10,000. Two choices: Apple stock or the S&P 500. Most people think they already know the answer. They don't. Here's the thing. If you'd put that $10,000 into Apple 20 years ago, you'd be sitting on a small fortune today. Everybody knows that story by now. But that's not the question I'm asking you. The real question is this: knowing what you know right now in 2026, where should new money actually go? Apple or the whole market? My name's Ricky. I spend way too much time thinking about where money should actually go and why smart people still get this decision wrong. If you've ever stared at your brokerage app, finger hovering over the buy button, not sure if you're about to make a great move or a dumb one, stick around. Hit subscribe. It actually helps more than you'd think. Okay, let's talk about what actually happens in your head when you're deciding this. You open your investment app, you've got $10,000 sitting there. Maybe it's a bonus. Maybe it's savings you finally feel ready to invest. And there's this little voice. It says, just buy Apple. Why? Because you use an iPhone. You've got a MacBook. Half your family does too. The company feels unstoppable. It feels obvious. Here's the thing though. That feeling, it's not analysis, it's familiarity. And those are two very different things. So you sit there, you think about Apple's stock chart, you remember someone on social media bragging about how much they made, and suddenly the S&P 500, the boring, diversified, buy the whole market option, it feels weak by comparison, slow, unexciting. Look, I get it. Nobody brags at a dinner party about owning an index fund. Nobody posts a screenshot of "I made a steady, predictable 7% this year." But people absolutely post screenshots of a single stock doubling. So the pressure builds. You start to feel like picking the index fund is the safe but boring choice, and picking Apple is the smart choice, the one real investors make. That belief, that one single belief, has cost regular people an enormous amount of money over the last few decades. Because you're not just choosing an investment in that moment, you're choosing a bet, a concentrated, all-in bet on one company's next 20 years. That's the real problem here. Not math, not strategy. It's emotion dressed up as confidence. Here's where I want to challenge something. Most people think investing is about picking winners. Find the next big thing, buy it early, get rich. That's the story we've been sold by movies, by finance influencers, by that one guy at work who won't stop talking about his Tesla calls. But here's what most people don't realize. The investors who actually build long-term wealth almost never do it by picking single winners. They do it by owning the entire game board. Think about it this way. When you buy Apple, you're betting on one team. When you buy the S&P 500, you basically own a piece of all 500 teams, including Apple. So this isn't really Apple versus the market. It's Apple alone versus Apple plus 499 other companies. Said that way, it already sounds different, doesn't it? Sit with that for a second, because here's where it gets really interesting. The reframe isn't stocks are risky, so play it safe. It's concentration is the risk, not investing itself. Once you see it that way, the whole decision changes shape. Let's make this simple. No jargon, just numbers. Right now, Apple makes up around 7% of the S&P 500. That means if you buy the S&P 500, you already own Apple, just in a smaller, safer dose. So the real comparison isn't Apple or nothing, it's all Apple all the time versus a little bit of Apple plus 499 other companies working alongside it. Here's a simple way to picture it. Imagine $10,000 split into 100 equal slices. If you go all in on Apple, all 100 slices ride on one company's decisions: new products, leadership changes, competition, lawsuits, supply chains in countries you've never thought about. Now imagine the S&P 500 version. About 7 of those slices are still in Apple. The other 93 are spread across banks, energy companies, healthcare, retailers, software firms, and more. If Apple has a rough decade, and yes, even great companies have rough decades, the S&P 500 investor barely feels it. The Apple-only investor feels everything. And here's the part that surprises people. Over long stretches of time, very few individual companies actually beat the broader market. Most underperform it, even ones that looked unstoppable at some point. So when you buy a single stock, you're not just hoping it does well, you're hoping it's the rare exception. Now let's go one layer deeper, because the math is only half the story. Here's the thing about owning one company. Your financial future becomes tied to decisions made by people you'll never meet, a CEO you've never spoken to, a product team making bets you don't see coming, a board deciding on a strategy shift that may or may not work out. With the S&P 500, you're not relying on one leadership team getting it right. You're relying on the general direction of the American economy, innovation, productivity, consumer spending, continuing to move forward over time. That's a much wider bet. Now, here's something most people don't realize. Apple was once weeks from running out of cash. Late 1990s, the company that now feels untouchable was nearly gone. Most people only remember the comeback. They forget how close it came to not happening at all. Sit with that for a second, because here's the cause and effect that matters. If you'd put your entire $10,000 into Apple right before that stretch, your outcome depended entirely on a recovery that wasn't guaranteed. With the S&P 500, your outcome smooths out because winners and losers are constantly being absorbed into one number. This is the part that most people overlook completely. It's not just what happens if Apple does well, it's what happens if Apple doesn't. Most people only run the optimistic scenario in their head. They never seriously picture the other one. And that's the core difference. One path depends on one story going right. The other path depends on many stories averaging out over time. Let me bring this to life with two people. I'll call them Derek and Priya. Derek gets a $10,000 bonus in 2020. He's confident, he loves his iPhone, he puts the whole thing into Apple stock. Priya gets the same bonus, same year, she puts hers into a simple S&P 500 index fund. No excitement, no bragging rights, just boring automatic investing. For a couple of years, Derek feels like a genius. Apple does well. He's outperforming Priya and he lets her know it. But here's the twist most people don't picture. A few years later, Apple goes through a stretch of slower growth, concerns about new product cycles, regulatory pressure overseas, growth that's still positive but no longer explosive. Meanwhile, Priya's index fund keeps chugging along. Some of her companies are struggling, others are thriving. It evens out into steady, unspectacular growth. By year 5, something shifted. Apple's slower stretch has eaten into Derek's lead, and Priya, without doing anything dramatic, has quietly caught up. In some years, she's actually ahead. Derek didn't do anything wrong exactly. He just took on a risk most people never fully understood they were taking. And here's the emotional part nobody talks about. Derek checks his portfolio constantly. Every Apple headline stresses him out. Every earnings call feels personal. Priya barely checks hers. Her stress level and her financial outcome are simply different experiences. That difference, the emotional one, matters just as much as the dollar amount. Okay, here's a truth that's going to wake some of you up. Even most professional fund managers, people who do this for a living with research teams and Bloomberg terminals, fail to beat the S&P 500 over long periods of time. Decade after decade of data backs this up. That's not me being dramatic. So think about what that actually means. If trained professionals with full-time jobs dedicated to picking winning stocks mostly can't outperform a simple low-cost index fund, what does that say about picking a single stock based on brand loyalty? Here's the part most people ignore completely. Liking a company's products has nothing to do with whether its stock will outperform the market going forward. Nothing. You can love your iPhone and still have Apple underperform for a stretch. Those two things live in completely separate worlds. This is where it gets really interesting, though. The S&P 500 isn't some passive do-nothing strategy. It's constantly updating itself. Struggling companies eventually get replaced by stronger, growing ones. It's not static, it's evolving every single year, automatically, without you lifting a finger. So the question was never really boring index fund versus exciting stock pick. It's a system designed to adapt and replace its weak links over time, versus a single company you're hoping never has a weak decade. Said that way, it stops sounding like an obvious choice and starts sounding like the gamble it actually is. Here's where we zoom out, because the real difference between Derek and Priya isn't just math, it's mindset. Investing in a single stock pulls you into a short-term emotional cycle. Every headline matters. Every earnings call feels a referendum on your decision. The S&P 500 approach builds a completely different habit. You're not reacting to one company's news cycle. You're playing a long, slow game tied to the broader economy's progress over decades. And here's something important. Wealth isn't usually built by one brilliant pick. It's built by staying invested consistently through boring years and scary years alike without blowing it up out of fear or excitement. Here's what most people don't realize until much later in life. The investors who do the best aren't the ones who found the next big winner. They simply didn't interrupt their own progress. They didn't panic sell in 2020. They didn't go all in on hype in 2021. They just kept showing up year after year. That's not thrilling content for social media, but it's the actual blueprint behind almost every quiet financial success story you'll never hear about, because it doesn't make for an exciting post.
Time in the market, behavior over time, consistency. That's the real engine, not the ticker symbol you picked one afternoon. Let's bring this together. Buying Apple alone means betting your entire outcome on one company's next chapter. Buying the S&P 500 means owning a piece of hundreds of companies, including Apple, with the weak links automatically getting replaced over time. The math favors diversification. The behavior favors diversification too, because it's easier to stay calm and stay invested when your future isn't tied to one company's headlines. This isn't about hating Apple. It's about understanding what you're actually signing up for when you go all in on any single stock. If you want some excitement, fine. A small slice of your portfolio in individual stocks is a reasonable choice for some people. But your foundation, the bulk of your money, deserves a strategy that doesn't depend on one company getting everything right. So here's what I'd actually do with that $10,000. I'd ask myself one honest question. Am I trying to build long-term wealth, or am I trying to feel something exciting today? Those are two very different goals, and they call for two very different strategies. If it's long-term wealth you're after, the S&P 500 isn't the boring choice, it's the strategic one. It's the choice that doesn't require you to be right about one company's next 2 decades. I'm not telling you what to do with your money. That's genuinely your call. But if this helped you see the decision a little more clearly, do me a favor and hit subscribe. I'm breaking down decisions like this one every week without the hype. $10,000 is a real decision. Treat it like one. I'll see you in the next video.